Imagine a new kind of investing, a potentially life-changing way to invest that honors biblical principles, the kind of principles that you and I grew up with. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has made biblically responsible investing possible, offering mutual funds and ETFs that are filtered for biblical principles. Don't compromise your values. Invest with Timothy Plan. Ask your financial advisor or call Timothy Plan at 1-800-TIM-PLAN. Again, that's 1-800-846-7526 and discover what it means to be a biblically responsible investor. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing. Mutual funds distributed by Timothy Partners Ltd. and ETFs distributed by Foreside Fund Services LLC. As a paid testimonial, there is no guarantee of future performance and each experience will differ. Well, hey there, welcome to another edition of the MemoPod, and I have now discovered, by the way, we haven't made any additions because I was gone last week, and so I just got back from a vacation, and so I haven't put anything together here. But anyway, I just discovered a new thing that we're going to have to take care of here in this new area from which we are recording and producing the MemoPod and everything else, and it is the soundproofing from outdoor weather events. That was one of the things that the Heck Hole struggled with a little bit, but I always kind of liked, because remember I created the rainforest environment inside the Heck Hole. Those of you who have joined us recently and you've never known the Heck Hole, you'd have to go back into the archives to see the video of it. But you know, the fake greenery all around and all of that. And I could turn the lights down and have the firefly lights and stuff like that. It's great. And so when it would storm outside, I could just turn off the inside rainstorm sound that I had, of course, set up, obviously. I could just turn all that off and listen to the real thing. But I don't have the rainforest thing going now. Instead, what I've got is, since this is in my garage, outside where the downspout is. I've been having fits with that thing because when they made the things just spill right into the mulch that's outside the front. So it's just like clearing out this huge space. It's a disaster. I mean, you got to know better than that if you're building a house. You got to know better than that. But anyway, sorry. I digress. But so you're going to hear those sounds because we got a rainstorm going on right now. And so if you hear background noise or sounds like somebody's beating a tom-tom, that's the downspout that I'm having fits with right now. In fact, the whole thing is probably just going to break loose and collapse to the ground. But anyway, welcome to another edition of the MemoPod. Those of you who are free subscribers, you're in on this part. In the second half of the MemoPod, I have some information about my personal life that I would like to share with those of you who are paid subscribers, which you may be interested in, you may not be interested in, but we're all family. That's what the paid subscriber community is all about. We share our thoughts, our ideas, those of us that are comfortable doing so. And so I'm going to tell you, let you in on a little something that you may in fact find interesting. That comes up for paid subscribers in the second half, as well as, now I like Bret Baier on Fox News. I love Brit Hume, who used to be the anchor of the evening news on Fox. I do, and I think that those guys are great. And I think as far as journalism goes, they're still attempting to do it, which is nice. However, I think we got a complete swing and a miss. I don't know if you saw who recently died, but the way that he is being remembered, and this is what we do, by the way. We take somebody that isn't a flagrant radical on either side of the political spectrum, and we gauge them and who they were in our political environment, in our social environment, and our cultural environment. We compare them against the nut jobs, and it makes them look a lot better than what they actually were. Now, I don't know about as an individual, but I'm talking about as someone in a position in the public trust, an elected official. Let's be honest about who these people were. I'll explain what I'm talking about in the second half, as well as that personal information. But I got to start here because I'm not expecting it. But number one, the media owes several people a big apology. Like I said, I'm not expecting it. But on top of that, I think it's very, very important, and I'll try to explain this as we go through this opening segment. I think it's very important that the truth get out about something that just occurred. In February, the New Republic, which is a left-wing publication, they blamed the death of how old was this girl? I want to make sure that I get this right. She went by the name, she called herself, she was 16. She called herself Nex Benedict. That was not her name. Her name was not Nex. Her name was Dagny. Dagny Benedict died. She was a self-described, self-identified, non-binary individual, meaning she was gender and sexual confused. That's the reality. She was a girl, but she believed herself to be and pretended to be non-binary, meaning that she did not believe that God had created her female. She didn't believe that God created her male. She didn't believe God created her either of those things and came up with the idea that she wasn't either, which of course is not scientifically possible. It's not rationally possible. But since we're now in an era where there is no moral grounding, we all go around and say, well, you just make it up for yourself, whatever you're content to do. So the New Republic finds out, as many do, about this girl, Dagny Benedict's death. She died a day after a fight in a bathroom at her school. And this is what the headline read. Quote, Oklahoma Republicans passed a bathroom bill. Now a trans kid is dead. That was their headline. Now, can you guess, or can you surmise, can you deduce what it is that they're trying to say with that? Well, they're trying to say exactly what several other elected officials and spokespeople had to say. Here's the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre. I'm just going to read her quote. Every young person deserves to feel safe and supported at school. Our hearts are with Nex Benedict's family, their friends, because as non-binary, Nex, whose name is Dagny Benedict, this girl, Dagny Benedict, didn't want to be referred to as she. She said, well, my pronoun is there. Well, no, it's not. That doesn't even make logical sense. But here are grown adults, the White House press secretary, using an inappropriate pronoun to describe a female girl who perished. Our hearts are with Nex Benedict's family, their friends, and their entire school community in the wake of this horrific tragedy. Then you have Senator Elizabeth Warren, who ran for president. She's a wild progressive leftist. The killing of Nex Benedict, keep that description in mind. The killing of Nex Benedict is gut-wrenching and underscores the danger of extremists who are dehumanizing kids with anti-trans hate in Oklahoma and across the country. Every student should feel safe at school and supported for who they are. Nex deserves justice. Okay, if you think for a second that Elizabeth Warren cares anything about this girl and about justice, that's not what this is about. This is about fundraising. This is about politics. This is about attention for Elizabeth Warren. Here's California State Senator Scott Wiener, a gay and lesbian LGBT champion. Quote, Nex Benedict, a non-binary kid. Notice how nobody is referring to this girl by her name. Nex Benedict, a non-binary kid, is dead after being bullied and attacked in a school restroom. The anti-trans laws sweeping the country, including aggressive gender policing in restrooms, have real-world deadly consequences. It's always interesting that Scott Wiener and others never want to talk about deadly real-world consequences when men identifying themselves, presenting themselves as female, or not even really trying to, go into female restrooms and abuse or harm women. We don't talk about those real-world consequences. Here's a former House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi. She shares a post from The Advocate, which is a gay publication. It has the headline, Oklahoma transgender student dies after allegedly assaulted by students at school. At least the word allegedly was in there, but Pelosi went on and wrote that Dagny Benedict's death from a brutal assault, the death was from a brutal assault in their high school bathroom, again, wrong pronoun, is outrageous and heartbreaking. The anti-trans fervor fueled by extreme Republicans across the country is having deadly consequences for our children. We must stand up against anti-trans hate. Again, this isn't about the girl. It's not about her grieving family. It's not about her community. This is about Nancy Pelosi. This is about fundraising. This is about Democrat Party politics. The GLAAD president, that's Gay Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, Sarah Kate Ellis, she demanded that, quote, leaders and extremists be held responsible for failing to keep necks safe. The New York Times covered Dagny Benedict's death between February 21st and March 1st. 7 different stories. Here was a headline, Anti-trans policies draw scrutiny after 16-year-old's death in Oklahoma. And the story goes on and on and on. Now, I can, let me read one more. No, I don't want to read that yet, because here's what happened in the intervening time. In the intervening time, we found out that Dagny Benedict did not die from a brutal assault. Benedict did have an altercation in the girls' bathroom of, and I think the name of the school was Owasso High School in Oklahoma. But there has never been any evidence that she was beaten because of her gender. Okay? I think that I mentioned this in the MemoPod before. Preliminary autopsy reports, the preliminary reports, when all of these people were saying what they were saying, the preliminary reports found that the teenager did not die as a result of trauma. She had said, the girl before her death, she told police that 3 girls beat her after she had poured water on the girls because the girls were laughing at her and her friend for what they wore, because of the way that they dress, all of that. The medical examiner's report indicates she suffered from, quote, bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, self-harm, meaning that she would cut herself, chronic tobacco abuse, chronic marijuana use. Her bipolar disorder medication, fluoxetine, was present in her system and may have contributed to her death. In addition, the full autopsy is now out, and it has been ruled a suicide. There was massive amounts of Benadryl in the teenager's blood. The American College of Toxicology reports that she could have consumed between 50 and 100 Benadryl pills before her death. Okay, so first things first. The death is still a horrific tragedy. She wasn't murdered, but her death is a tragedy. Especially when you find out that this girl suffered from extraordinary mental and psychological problems. And then when you realize that many of those comorbidities are fueled and enhanced by the sexual and the gender confusion that is caused by adults. Here's the best way to think of it. Best way to think of it is if this was some other mental or psychological problem. For instance, anorexia. Anorexia is a mental condition that convinces a painfully skinny person that they are morbidly obese. They grow to hate their body, they see fat on their body where there is none, and they starve themselves to death. People tell them, you're not fat, you're skinny. But they don't believe that. They see themselves as very large and obese and disgustingly big. Is anyone going to suggest, and I hesitate to even say this because we're probably getting to a point where someone will start saying this, that we are hating anorexic people when we do not affirm who they see themselves to be? Who are we to tell them that they are not morbidly obese? If that's how they see themselves, then we should affirm that. Okay, right now, I would like to venture a guess that over 90% of us would say, of course you don't tell an anorexic person that they're right, that they're fat. They need help. They're clearly not fat. So when it's another psychological condition, we understand the loving thing to do is not to facilitate the delusion. But when it is the psychological problems associated with gender dysphoria, which is an actual condition, and then these made-up conditions, that many times it's a social contagion, but whatever the cause may be, a person who is biologically and obviously a female, presenting themselves to be male, and we assume, oh, well, the right thing to do is to facilitate the delusion? Do we not think that there will be consequences to that? We talk about real-world consequences. That's what our politicians are referring to. Yes, there are. When a depressed and an anxious and a bipolar teenager who is already on medication for mental and psychological problems, when they have adults in their lives who are fueling their delusions, I don't know how those same individuals then get away with blaming other people who are telling the truth, who are offering actual counsel and help to the disturbed child, how they can get away with accusing those people of hating, and those people for being responsible for the conditions that led to their death. And now we know more. Court records obtained by Red State and other organizations revealed that this girl, Dagny Benedict, grew up with a troubled home life, which shouldn't surprise anybody. She was repeatedly sexually abused by her father. From the time she was 9 to the time that she was 11 years old before he went to prison. She was repeatedly raped and molested by her own father. She told investigators that her father anally raped her when she was 9 years old and had gone on to molest her for years. The statistics are largely hidden because we don't care about truth as a society anymore. Like Elizabeth Warren, like Nancy Pelosi, like so many others, we care about politics and fundraising, even when it means dead children. The statistics, when you find them, are alarming. I don't have any in front of me, but I would say that it is a conservative estimate to say that 90% of females who believe themselves to be transgender, that they were molested, sexually abused as children. That we're going to pretend that there is no connection that deserves to be investigated and dealt with, that there needs to be counseling to help overcome the trauma from which a young female is obviously seeking to hide from, to run away from, to get away from by changing their gender. They're trying to escape exploitation. That is the most logical, sane conclusion a person can draw. And you see it in cases like Dagny Benedict, and you see it in cases with people that you know. Now, you want to make the argument that it's the opposite for boys that present themselves as girls, that they actually desire, they have a psychological desiring of being exploited. that there's something that goes haywire in their brain and they want that exploitation. You can make that argument. I don't know, and I'm not willing to posit some scientific theory, but the reality of the situation is becoming increasingly clear to people who want to see it. That when it's all said and done, more and more countries, and the United States may be slow, we typically are, to follow in the footsteps of Europe, but European countries that have already gone down this gender reconstructive surgery path and the mutilation of children, the transitioning, and they're now banning those practices because of the horrific consequences that it has. It's Nazi-era Germany experimentation is what it is on kids. And there's coming a day where there will be a reckoning. I need us to remember these names and these voices and these media outlets who are blaming the actual people who are speaking sanity for the deaths of, I want to use the word pathetic, but it would be so misinterpreted. Pathetic in the sense that they need help, they need sympathy. Pitiable, maybe is the word that would be more socially accepted today. The word pathetic used to mean that, but now it sounds like, you're pathetic. And that's not the sense in which I am saying it. These pitiable beings that need help, who have been abused, and who are going through life circumstances and psychological trauma that so many of our elected leaders are pretending to be their friends and exploiting them. And when they die, it just becomes fodder for more exploitation. It's sick, is what it is. And I'm telling you, if Christians don't stand up for the truth and don't stand up for telling the truth and getting help for these individuals, the number of Dagny Benedicts is going to just skyrocket in the coming years. And I personally don't want to see it. And I'd like to think that you don't either. You can let me know your thoughts, peter@peterheck.com. That's peter@peterheck.com. It's just really, really sad. There's evidence now that the Washington Post knew of the sexual abuse that Dagny Benedict had faced and mentioned it in passing in their original story, but nobody dug deeper into the psychological trauma and the mental health comorbidities that so often accompany gender confusion. Nobody wants to do that. And until they do, this doesn't get any better. Again, your thoughts welcome. peter@peterheck.com. That's peter@peterheck.com. All right, some personal stuff to share with you in the second half. Those of you who are paid subscribers, as well as let's set the record straight about who a key individual who recently died there in D.C., who they really were. And let's not be carried away with our, well, things are awful now, we do anything to have people like this back. Let's remember who they were and the legacy that they carved out for themselves. I'll tell you who I'm talking about and why I'm talking all about it. I'll do all of that in the second half for you paid subscribers. Free subscribers, I'll see you next week for another MemoPod. Again, hopefully better, finished up in here, and maybe I will have done something about the downspout. I doubt it, but maybe. But I'll have to see you then. Paid subscribers, hang tight.
The Memo with Peter Heck.
Please patronize and thank all the sponsors of the Heck podcast, including McGonagall's Buick GMC, Terrell's Auto Service, Norris Insurance, Stevens Machine, Creative Financial Center, Indiana Right to Life, Tri-Green Tractor, the Indiana Family Institute, Hartman Family Farms, Liberty Financial Group, the Wyman Group, and J. Watson Creations.